Mr. England, you want to come up here? I want to get started on time tonight. I know that this is right here before Christmas, and everybody's got plenty going on, but it's a really important topic, so I just want to make sure we have all of our state representatives up here. Tonight we have Representative Hank Zuber, Senator Bryce Wiggins, and Senator Jeremy England. Okay, I was trying to make sure I had that right before I said it out loud. We're here tonight to discuss three topics. One is funding for PERS, because y'all all probably seen lots of things about how PERS, the unfunded liability just keeps growing, and we want to make sure that we cover that well. Mr. Hank Zuber is going to start with that, and I do see we have a lot of elected officials here in the room, and I appreciate all y'all coming, from our mayor to the Chancery Clerk, the sheriff. We have a lot of people here that represent a lot of big groups, and then we also have superintendents, David Baggett, Mr. Mike Lindsay, and former superintendent Dr. Larry Drawdy, and some former Mr. Robinson. There's a lot of former superintendents in here. So I wanted to mention this. What you're seeing on the screen is the Tier 5 comparison. The first column is what is current Tier 4. The second column is what has been passed for Tier 5 for anyone starting to work in the PERS system for the first time, or anyone who has started to work but taken their money out in the past but has not came back in until March 1. And then the last column is an option that's not the greatest option for what some people think, but at least it gets you the same place as the House Bill 1 does. If that, if they got to do something, that's a possibility. But anyway, I wanted to get y'all started tonight. Mr. Zuber has got to leave by 7 o'clock, so I want to give him the mic and let him get started with all of this. I also want to thank MRPEA, and y'all, there's newsletters out there, there's QR codes on the doors. If y'all want to join, that is where I get all of my information. So you don't always have to count on waiting on to see if Bonnie's going to email or Facebook. If you can get the information from other places besides just me. So here's Hank.
Thank you, Bonnie. Let me start off by thanking, as I did at my town hall meeting, thanking each and every one of you, especially this time of year. I know how extremely busy you are with Christmas coming up and New Year's. Bonnie, I want to thank you for putting this on, for organizing everything, for communicating with me. We've had several meetings. We've gone back and forth. Same from Ms. Linder and Mrs. Wade. Thank y'all for providing your input. I'm going to be as concise and blunt as I can. Okay. Who is responsible for the situation involving the retirement system?
The legislature in 1999.
We are.
That's right.
Bonnie, I'm waiting. You can finish. We are. No doubt. That's not. Well, we'll get Senator. I'll get to that. The legislature. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Why? Because back in 1999, the tax revenue was coming in. The legislature was trying to be generous. And we basically provided retirement benefits to people who never paid into the system. It is what it is. 1999. Ladies and gentlemen, fast forward. 2.5 years ago, Speaker White comes to me and says, For some reason, everybody calls me Zuber. I don't know why. I mean, instead of Hank but he said, Zuber, come into my office. I said, yes, sir. He says, we are elected to solve problems. We are elected to do what's right. I said, absolutely. He says, we need to do something about the retirement system. I said, what? We haven't done anything about the retirement system 25, 30 years. Ever since 1999, despite double-digit returns on investments for the last 8 to 10 years, it has slowly but surely gone down. The unfunded liability portion. I'm here to tell you right now that the funded liability portion, that portion of the plan which is funded, Bonnie, correct me if I'm mistaken, but it's about 55 to 56% fully funded. And if you don't think that's a problem, then you haven't been keeping up, as Senator Wiggins always points to, what the hell happened in Jackson County with the hospital system. They lost it. Now, I don't think that could ever happen in Mississippi because we have taxing authority, but does it really help you as a retiree if we save the system but have to increase your taxes, sales tax, income tax, 25, 30, 35%? No. So we started looking into it. And we came up with the House with the plan to add some expertise and knowledge to the board. And to be blunt and directly to the point, y'all disagreed with that, and it died in the Senate. The following year, the Senate came up with a plan to add Tier 5. Now, obviously, y'all all know the board voted for that. The retirement board voted for it, for Tier 5. Senate passed it, it passed the House. Now, that's not going to solve anything by itself in a vacuum. As Bonnie knows, she's been keeping on top of everything. The select committee that I co-chair had 4 or 5 meetings this summer. And again, we've been working on this not just for the last 4 or 5 months, but for the last 2.5 years. And it's going to take more money. That's the bottom line. It's just going to take more tax revenue to get to a point where we need to be. Now, I mentioned that the funded liability portion is 55, 56%? Okay. The average, the accounting accepted minimum standard is about 82%. So that tells you how big a hole we're in. The speaker said, let's do something now. Let's try to get this solved, because if we don't, ladies and gentlemen, we just cannot continue to kick the can down the road. The House has taken up some issues to try to solve it. The Senate has to. We provided the leadership. Has it been easy? No. Trying to do something now? Is that the right thing to do? Yes. I have some of my political colleagues in the audience. What's always right is not the easiest thing to do. In most cases, doing what's right is the hardest thing to do. The speaker charged me, working with the Senate, to come up with more money. Come up with more money up front, and to come up with a dedicated source of revenue annually to get us to a point where it's long-term viable. I'm going to give you some numbers, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we're looking at. If we came up with $500 million up front, plus $50 million annually, till fiscal year 35. That will get us to 90.5 fully funded in year 2054. If we came up with 100 million annually, nothing up front, from 2026 through 2035, that gets us to 89.2% in 2054. If we came up with 500 million plus 100 million annually from 27 through 55, it gets us to 99.5% fully funded by 2054. I believe there's agreement between the House and the Senate. My recommendation to the Speaker, and all of these numbers, it's amazing. Man, we had actuarial companies from all over, from Chicago and New York, that came and testified. And it was just amazing how close they were in terms of the actuarial analysis and where we would be if we followed the hypotheticals that I just gave you. My recommendation to the Speaker, and I hope we do it, and I know the Senate is talking about it, to come up with a large sum of tax revenue up front, and then a dedicated stream to get us to that 90 to 92%. I think we'll do it. Now the question is, the dedicated stream, where does that money come from? Does it come from the general fund? Did we take it? Did we change up the lottery structure where that money goes to? Do we add an additional stream of income that's not on the books now, like mobile sports betting? That's what we're talking about. So we're trying to finalize the numbers. We're going to do something to save the system. We cannot continue to kick the can down the road. If we do, it's not going to be good for anybody. And I'll go ahead, and if you want me to, I'll Senator Wiggins, Senator Eden.
All right, do y'all want to speak on?
Thank you, and I too appreciate this being held. And for those that don't know me, Bryce Wiggins, represent District 52. I am not going to repeat what Hank said, because everything Hank said is accurate. It's accurate. The numbers are the numbers. I'll put a context on it, and I will say this, that Hank has done a lot of what I call the grunt work. There's been hearings, there's been actuaries, there's been that. I didn't serve on that. I've been familiar with it. However, he knows the ins and outs of that and appreciate his work. And by the way, let me say this, for the Speaker of the House of the Representatives to come to our colleague and say, I want you to take this on, that shows respect for the leadership that we have down here. So, and he's right. Doing what's right is not always the most popular. And Hank mentioned something that I appreciate him saying. When I first got elected, and mind you, I was in the DA's, at the time, I was in the district attorney's office, so I'm in PERS. Was when the hospital system went under, the retirement system. And Hank's right. What happened here in Jackson County was the canary in the coal mine for what is happening with PERS. I don't need to tell you the pain that people went through. We had a grand jury look at what went on. They issued a grand jury report. It's a public record. My point is, it was painful, and what people thought they were getting was going away, and the only reason that some semblance of money came back was through lawsuits. Because, and I can explain how we got there in that situation, and that was way back in the 80s, somewhere along the line, some people had the brilliant idea to take hospitals out of PERS and create their own. Well, what did we have? We had a bunch of people who were unqualified running the hospital system, PERS, okay? Fast forward, the defined benefit plan that we have in PERS, that we're all a part of, and I say we because I'm there, that has led to bankruptcies in states like Illinois. So to Hank's point, what he said about we promised benefits to people that we weren't paying and people weren't in the system. That's great if you're getting the benefits. I understand it. The problem is you got to pay. And we've actually, and I don't know the specific numbers, but over the last certainly 10 years, the amount of people paying into the system has decreased exponentially. You have less workers, you have less, people paying into the system. And by the way, that statistic is going on all across the country. We got less people. Back in 1999 when this was passed, if you just kind of want to put it in a particular situation, that was when the baby boomers were at their height. And so you had for every one retiree, you had something like 5 people paying in. It's the exact opposite now. It is absolutely unsustainable. That's why you're hearing from the legislators, we have to do something. And if you don't think that I don't know, and some of you know this, my daughter's in the teaching program at Ole Miss. She will be a teacher. When she retires and we continue to do what we're doing, she won't have a retirement. And that's a fact. So this is the problems that we're facing. And so the Tier 5 and what we did last year, nobody said it was going to solve everything right away, but what we said was we had to do something. And the way I put it is, what we were being told until prior to last year was, and what really kind of got this started was the board came about and said, because of the unfunded liability that Hank has talked about, we're going to have, and I'm approximating, $300 million a year for the next 30 years to even just cover the unfunded liability, to get to the 80% that Hank, $300 million. We have and I'm on appropriations, I think Hank and Jeremy, we have a $6 billion budget. Education is the single largest budget item total. That is a lot of money. And $350 million, I handle the budget for Department of Public Safety. Those are vests. Those are teacher pay raises. We're talking about a teacher pay raise this year. I think everybody up here would support that. That we wouldn't be able to do teacher pay raises. We can't do funding of roads and bridges and things like that. So, to Hank's point, yes, we as a group in the legislature are talking about how do we get there. And the recommendation I'm hearing this year from our side is that to come up with a sum of money in what I call stopgap, which we did the last 2 years. I think the numbers are around $150 to $250 million of general fund dollars. And what that means is that's unencumbered money. That's money that could have gone to teacher pay raises. We put that into PERS. We're looking at a bigger number, and then you pay off every year. So we're looking at that. And I just want to mention a couple other things. I've been vocal about and frustrated by the board, the PERS board. And because the PERS board, as it was set up, is elected by all of us in the system. Only prior to last year, the board was the one who was empowered to make the decisions. And it's the board's decisions that got us to a 56% unencumbered. when there's other states that were at 100% funded. And so why was the board making those decisions? I don't know. I do know this from what the numbers I've heard. The board had hired actuaries paying millions and millions and millions of dollars to professionals and getting a return that was nowhere near what everybody else was. And somehow they kept getting reelected to the board position. So 2 years ago, people didn't want the elected officials, the legislature, on it. And that came over from the House. We ultimately didn't do that, but it fell to the legislature to try to fix the issue. So these are all the issues that we've been having to deal with, and the numbers are the numbers. And we want to try to get somewhere where we can help everybody. And let me be clear, nobody in the legislature is talking about taking away anybody's benefits. It's how are we going to get there and solve the problem that we have. So with that, and I'll wait for questions too.
Thank you, Bryce. Hey, thank y'all for being here. My name is Jeremy England. I've served in the Senate since 2020, so I'm not as old or as experienced as these guys in the legislature, but I can speak from that. I can tell you that when I first got into the legislature in 2020, I was put on the Finance Committee. Appropriations Committee appropriates the money. Finance Committee is who tries to find out where the revenue comes from. It does the taxing and it does things like that. And so we hear from PERS at the beginning of every session. I didn't know a lot about it. I had never been a PERS member. I knew people like my friend Mike over here who had talked about it. I know that when I would go door to door campaigning and I talked to people that were on fixed income, and they were worried about things like having to hook up to a sewer line as opposed to a septic tank and things like that. When you're on fixed income, that kind of thing is very important. And as a young man, it really hadn't hit me, but it did then. So I get how important this is and know how important it is. But when I got on Finance Committee, what I started hearing was, hey, we're going to have to do a Tier 5. That was 2020. Okay, that was before this Tier 5. I want to talk about that a little bit here in just a second, how we got to where we are now. But we also heard, and we've also got to have a dedicated source of funding for PERS. We've got to start putting money into it. Well, from an outsider who had not been on PERS or anything, when I heard that, my nearest close source to refer to was my mom, who just retired after 44 years at Ingalls, and all of her retirement benefits were what she worked for. They were very important for her, but one thing she didn't have was a way to go grab another dedicated source. And of course, when we're talking about dedicated sources, we're talking about taxes on things and other things. And so to me, that tells me two things. If we need a Tier 5 and we're looking for a dedicated source that isn't coming from an employer or coming from interest on investments or coming from investments, then we're trying to fund something that's just not affordable. And so we've got to figure out what to do, right? And I want to reiterate what Senator Wiggins just said. Nobody in the legislature has talked about taking benefits away from people that are already in the system. I've said that to every group I've talked to because that's important for you to hear, because everybody right now tends to be getting their information from Facebook and from different sources. And I can tell you that there's one thing that'll kill a bill faster in Jackson than anything else, and that's misinformation. Because misinformation will make it around the world before the truth has its shoelaces tied, right? We've all heard that. And that's what happens a lot. I still read comments, and I'll try to comment. I've kind of gotten away from comment on that. I've told people, hey, give me a call. You know, my number's out there. Give me a call and let's talk about this, because you can't get away from information or from misinformation on Facebook. And I want to make that clear, because when you get people, and I know we've all seen it happen, people are just trying to make points and score wins and walk away a winner of an argument, and you can't do that in this. That's not going to help anybody, and it's not going to get information about. Like, I still see people arguing that SLRP, which I didn't know what SLRP was when I ran, SLRP, which is what a terrible name for something, for retirement SLRP plan. We just got rid of that. This bill that we just passed. Now, again, when I say we got rid of it, if we were invested in it, it's still going, okay? I don't want to mislead you there, which is what everybody I've talked to has asked. Don't change anything if it's to this point. So we said, okay, but that's going away. I don't know why it was ever put in place. I don't know why this stuff in 1999 was put in place that we're talking about fighting right now, but we're doing it. And we're trying to figure it out because we care about your fixed income, about your retirement, about your benefits. We care about people like Sheriff Ledbetter back here, who has to go recruit people based on what's going on. So we're listening to all of this, okay? I don't want you to think it's falling on deaf ears, because number one, we can't respond on Facebook to every comment, and we can't get back to every comment. I wish we could. We don't have an office. My wife's sitting over here. She basically holds as much of this job as I do, because she sits there and helps me answer emails and does stuff when I get behind, because we don't have an office. I know places like Florida do. It'd be nice if we did have one of those. But just be sure to reach out to us, and that's why we're here tonight, okay? And I know this is a very hot topic, and if you look on any social media platform right now, you see people ready to kick us to the curb just because we're talking about this. But guys, if we don't talk about it, we're not going to get anything done, and we've got a problem to solve. Okay, we're a coastal community. My grandfather was in the Coast Guard, and one thing I loved about my grandpa when he was in the Coast Guard, when everybody else was coming back in, he was going out into the storm. And you've got three guys I know of up here, and others that we serve with, that we're more interested in going into the storms to try to solve problems than we are to just try to kick the can down the road. And that's happened way too much on this issue. Okay, I'm going to end one time real quick. I just want to mention this current Tier 5, because this is something that I have told everybody that I've talked to. Tier 5, obviously there's 4 other tiers, right? All of those other tiers were set in a way that provided benefits and that were very attractive and that did some things that were to hey, people want to come do this. And the affordability of it wasn't as much an issue. It was, hey, what can we pass? What will make us look good? What will get us reelected? What will do that? Well, with Tier 5, we decided we need a floor. We need a floor, because one thing we can't do, and I'm going to say this again because it's important for y'all to hear this, we're not going to take away from a tier that's already there. But what we can do is, if we need to, and I think we're going to need to, we can come back and add to Tier 5. Right? We can buy back some of these years, or we can do a plan where, maybe for our law enforcement or for somebody else, where if they work 6 and they get, or work 5 and get credit for 6 or something like that. There's things we can do, but we had to have that floor. And that's what Tier 5 is. Tier 5 represents us going into a house that's got a leak in it, and instead of just bailing water, we fixed the sink. We plugged the hole so that we could then start addressing the problem. And we're going to do that. I know that's look, it's so scary to hear a politician hear, hey, we're going to fix this. But we're working on it. And we're going to do it with your help, okay? I want y'all to know that. I want to hear what you have to say. Bonnie's been a great source for me. I met Bonnie this past year and talked with her, and went and had dinner with her. And we talked about this, and she's very passionate about it. My friend Mike Montgomery has put me in touch with some people, Sam being one that I can talk to, and I've talked with them, and I've talked with people in Jackson. My fellow Senator Daniel Sparks, who I'm sure you all have seen and heard about and talked to. That man, he's expecting his first child, by the way, right after we start legislative session. So pray for him, because that's a tough time to expect your first child. I can tell you that. But he's worked so hard on this and put a lot of time in on it. None of us want to hurt your retirement or hurt your system and what we have now, and we're not going to. We're trying to make sure that this continues, that this is something that we can recruit on. And I would just echo that what Hank said is something I've talked to Lieutenant Governor about. If we're going to put money into this, we need to put a big chunk into it early. Let that start gathering interest, something like $500 million, and then look at $50 million or even $100 million if we can down the road. But what does that represent? That $500 million, that $50 million, that $100 million. Well, that's money when our appropriators sit down and start appropriating money. That's money that's not going to a teacher pay raise. Or that's money that's not going to a road or a bridge in the county. And I promise you I have walked that grounds of that Capitol as many times as I can, and I haven't found a money tree yet. But we've got to solve this problem, and we will, but it's complicated. Every string we pull tightens another way. But this is a very important string, and it's one that's going to get loose from us if we don't start trying to fix it. And that's why we're here. So thank y'all for listening to us and being here tonight.
Okay, he has touched on Tier 5. I real quick want to go through what the differences are on Tier 5 from what is in current Tier 4. And then these gentlemen have been nice enough, they're ready, they're here to answer some questions, and then we've got one other issue on the table tonight. The first big issue with Tier 5 that I want you to be thinking about is when I'm setting these actuarial meetings, it says that the actuarial numbers that we're dealing with right now are based on 2.5% growth, okay, in what's coming into the retirement system, okay? Now, I want you to think about this. As far as people coming in after March 1 that are Tier 5, they will no longer get well, first of all, they will still pay the 9% as an involuntary deduction. Every bit of the money the employer is paying goes to PERS for basically the current people, and they will only get 1% per year forever, okay? All of us that are in Tiers 1 through 4 got 2% per year, some of us up to 25 years and then 2.5 thereafter, and even Tier 4 currently gets 2% for first 30 years plus 2.5% above 30, okay? Then you have vesting eligibility is the same. One of the biggest complaints that I have heard over and over again is you have to work to 35 years. And y'all, when it comes to people who are in especially our first responders and our teachers and people who are getting degrees and all, that's one of the biggest draws to getting anybody to go into education is that you get to retire early. Besides that, I know at my age, you wouldn't want me in a classroom with those kids, okay? But anyway, so you've got to think about 35 years with no age limit, okay? Under this plan, where it's 30 years now, okay? Your final average salary is currently on our old plan, the highest 4 years. This moves it to the highest 8 consecutive years or last 96 months. Personally, as long as you know that going in, I don't see that being that huge of a deal. It probably shouldn't be consecutive, but I have no problems, and Hank and I've talked about with the highest 8 years. Now, the next one though, that really is going to, I know, hurt a lot of you employers, is there is no sick leave or personal leave that can be taken into PERS. That encourages our people that come in after March 1 to use every day, every year. And for you educators, I think y'all will agree with me, basically that means more substitutes in all of our classrooms. Okay? Now how is that going to work with our test scores? Okay? Then you're going to have Then you've got also no guaranteed COLA under this plan, okay? Now, when this other plan was offered to the PERS board, Senator Sparks, I was sitting in the room when it happened, said, you don't need to offer an option, even though it gets us to the same place because it will confuse the legislature. I know he said that because I was sitting there, it's on the video. If you watch the PERS board meeting, well, my first response was, well, how stupid does he think they are? But anyway, that was how I felt about it. So, I mean, these people we elect are intelligent human beings. Why does he think they can't even look at two plans, okay? So basically this third plan, this defined benefit plan with a 1% COLA gets it to the same place. And I know everybody wants to have at least a 3% COLA. It could be a 1%, it could be tied to, but on the 1%, then it gets you to the same place the other does, but everything else stays the same as Tier 4. And if they will just look at it, because right now, and we've got several employers in here that can verify, what PERS is telling us is that the employers are supposed to send this 5% that's going into the defined contribution plan, which is a forced savings plan. that check is supposed to be cut directly to a private company called Empower. And only the 4% goes to PERS. And y'all, I'm concerned about that because if, just like Jeremy said a while ago, if they try to change it, how you gonna get your money back from that private company? My other concern is, what do you write? Okay, you need to go?
No,
Yeah,
go,
you need questions.
No, just, is that a management fee to Empower, or what, why are they getting that 4%?
No, they're getting 5% of the 9%. What's happening is the 4% goes into pay their 1% COLA forever.
Okay.
5% is a forced savings account for them that there is no employer match going towards. Like a like a deferred comp plan is what it is. So they're getting, and they can take it with them anytime they want to leave.
Okay,
Yeah, and we should have talked earlier today about this a little more, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, just briefly, I have no issues with increasing from 4 to 8. The COLA, we would have to run the numbers on that. I don't know where that gets us. If it's actuarially sound, so be it. Now, of importance, this whole situation is in a state of flux, okay? We do not have a final bill. There is talk among the House and the Senate on possibly reducing the 35 to 30 for teachers and for law enforcement. I don't know if that gets through the whole process next year, but at least we're talking about it.
Our ask is that y'all consider doing something at the beginning of this session so that it never goes into effect going to that private company. You want to mention anything on Tier 5? Anything on the Tier 5?
No, I don't think so. I will say that, so last year, so it's our legislative session. For those of you that, again, I've been here, I'm new enough to remember what it's like to not know exactly how the legislative session works and all of that. So I'm going to just tell you, we're there from March until, from January until March. Okay, it's a really quick session. Things go really quick. And we have 122 members in the House and 52 members in the Senate that we have to try to get all on board to make anything happen. Otherwise, it goes away for the whole year. And we don't want that to happen with the situation that we're looking at. We've got to do some things. I've talked with Bonnie on this plan. We've talked about it and we've looked at it. The first time I saw it was after legislative session. The PERS board, I don't think they brought us this plan, did they?
Because Senator Sparks told them they could.
Okay. Well, look, they can still, look, anybody can get me anytime they want to, and same with all of us. We can hear it. I just don't, the plans that we had were vetted by the committees. The committees look at these bills, they get passed, we get them on the floor, we have to pass them. The legislative process is supposed to be a process that we look at and it takes some time, and we do that. So when I tell you we're going to go back and look at Tier 5 again, we absolutely are. And it's easy for us to do it then. Remember when I told you a minute ago, we looked at having a floor plan, a plan that's, by floor, I mean the lower level. We're trying to fix a leak here. We're not wanting to promise something and then say, oh, we got to tear it down again later or tear it down again later. We're looking for a fix for this, something that we can make permanent, something that we can buy back on later, something that we can offer, to bring down that 35 years to 30 years or 25 years or some way to do that. By the way, the defined contribution part of the plan is something that has been very, very attractive to some people in the generation that's younger than me. When they can look at working for 5 or 10 years and they've got that defined contribution part of their retirement that they can then take with them to another job. And that's something that's brand new in this Tier 5. And that's something that we had to look at because when you look at Eagles, you look at all of our employers, folks just aren't staying in jobs as long as they were.
But that's why
And
all of us stay.
well, I know. No. Well, I know that's why you stayed. But I don't even think. But and this is tough. Generational speaking is tough for me. We get it as attorneys too, because when you're trying to pick a jury, you've got to know how generational thinking works. And I know we all see it. It works differently. Bonnie, you and your generation, they were motivated by different things, right? We were motivated by different things. My generation is having probably too few kids, whereas way back when, my grandmother's generation was told, don't have so many kids. We're having too many kids. So generationally speaking, that is more attractive, I think. And Sheriff Ledbetter and I can talk about this later, and we can figure out if that's something that they're looking at when they ask, hey, if you work here for 10 years, that 14% or whatever it is that you've had put into this, and if you go to Ingalls then, or you go to the hospital, or you go to some other job, you take that with you. It's not lost. It's a defined contribution. You've earned it. So we are also looking at that, and that's tough it's tough for me to understand how those different generations think, but it's very important for us to look at, especially when we're talking about issues like recruiting and getting teachers here. One thing that wasn't mentioned that I do want to mention, my superintendents over here and Mike and everybody that we've all represent, and we have we brag about our Jackson County school system and all the school districts in our county all the time for a reason. It's because we have such great people working here. And I do think we will see talk of a teacher pay raise again this year. I know I've heard the speaker say it, and I've heard directly from the Lieutenant Governor say that we're looking at that this year, because it's time for that again, because as happens, we raise the pay rate here in Mississippi. The other states kind of do whatever they can do to catch up with us, and then we find ourselves back a little bit, having to compete. We're wanting to be competitive and to help on that area too. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of things going on. This is one issue, but it's one very important issue that we're looking at.
Real quick, if I may, this tends to be forgotten, ladies and gentlemen. The legislation also required what I call the modernization of the board. Their meetings are now streamlined, so each and every one of you can, whenever they have a meeting, you can go to their website and actually see how they vote, see what they're discussing, see what they're talking about. And we also required or gave them the option to provide notification, benefits, and communications electronically instead of by paper. And the paper, I can't remember how much the paper was costing, but it was astronomical. Lastly, so let's see, we modernized it. I forgot my train of thought. Electronic, live stream. I'm getting old. I'm sorry? But anyways, those were two major accomplishments that we made, and it's not being mentioned, but it was part of the legislation too.
Okay, all right. Did y'all want to ask some questions on Tier 5 before we go to the other issue of the night, which is the choice issue, school choice issue? Okay. You want to ask questions? Okay. Anyone want to come ask any questions about the tiers or make any comments about as far as recruitment and retention and those types of things? David? Mayor or Ledbetter or who?
It hasn't gone into effect yet, but obviously I'm speaking for the Jackson County School District. I'll just go ahead and tell you right now, the December graduates from all the universities in the state, we had 25 teacher candidates come out. Yeah, people are not going into education. Obviously, hopefully y'all are going to address it because of the teacher pay. I mean, every state around us pays more. We're losing to them every day. One thing that we could always have on our laurels was if you worked hard for 25, 30 years, you were going to have a decent retirement. You weren't going to get rich, but you'd have a decent retirement. It's hard for me now to go in and recruit and let our young people know, hey, and you may be right, Jeremy, they may look at it differently than people were 5 and 10 years ago, but it's getting harder and harder to attract good, solid teachers and to retain and keep them. And what I'm seeing right now, I really worry about 2 and 3 years from now, what we're going to be dealing with. If we don't have a solid foundation of pay that's going to attract and keep people in the profession, along with a good retirement system. Y'all already know this. I mean, and I know that we do have a problem, we need to resolve it, but I think we need to do it over time and not rashly where we're going to put ourselves in a situation where we're not going to be able to get good quality teachers. We've got great schools because we've got great teachers. If we can't continue to recruit great teachers and hold on to them, it doesn't matter what we want to do, we're not going to be able to accomplish what we want in the classroom.
Mayor, Mr. Lindsay, any of y'all, Josh, anybody from Jackson County, Sheriff, anyone else wants to say something?
All right, thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you all for coming here and spending your time with us. Thank you all also. I can only speak for what I know. At this time, we have 0 vacancies at the sheriff's office on the patrol side. And we have about 8 to 10 vacancies in our jail. I'd say from about 2016 to 2017, we had to take a portion of our department and basically become a staffing agency to continually hire those. The people just simply, like you said, they don't want to be in law enforcement, just like it's difficult to find teachers. My wife's a teacher in the PERS system for 21 and a half years, myself in PERS for 25 years. And sometimes you got to make difficult decisions in the positions you are. I know my lane. I'm not a legislature. I don't know what y'all do. I kind of do, but I can't go up there and do that. Mine's on the executive side, and you have to make difficult decisions. And you said it, one of you said, Representative Zuber, it's painful sometimes to make those decisions, just like you said, the hospital. And that's what I signed up to do, to make difficult decisions, and that's what I expect that's what the county expects from me, and that's what me as an elector expect from the legislator, to make some of those decisions that are going to have to sustain this program, sustain this retirement system for future generations. But I think we're in law enforcement. I just spoke to Captain with the Ocean Springs Police Department back there. They have vacancies also. It's just not popular to go into certain fields. But it's not just first responders. It's also our road workers, road departments, county workers, state workers. Just take into consideration that, please, when you make your decisions. I speak for trying to maintain the public safety in Jackson County and keep those numbers up where we're at now. And hopefully we don't go into a decline, because I know how that affects economic development. I know that how that affects neighborhoods that are coming up. There are thousands of homes that have been built in the last few years across Jackson County. Like I said, thank you for coming and explaining this to us. I'd like to speak to you later. I think Jeremy, me and you are going to talk later about some things for law enforcement and public safety and the fire service. But it's not just that, it's the teachers also. It's everybody that contributes to PERS that this is going to affect, and the ones that the difficulty that it's going to be to hire those later on affects when I retire and the ones that have already retired. And Bryce, when you retire, and when y'all retire, it's going to affect us. And I did attend your town hall meeting, Mr. Zuber. I appreciate you having that, and you did make some points to. Sometimes the legislator looks to the east and looks to the west, to Alabama and Louisiana, and to see how they're doing it. And we do too. I've had several deputies and several police officers and say, how in the world does Alabama have a system this good compared to what we have? And Louisiana have what they have. And you kind of explained it with the historical information that you've given us. But those guys that don't know the ins and outs, that don't come to these meetings, that I can't articulate back to them like you've just done to us, they may go somewhere else and leave the system and leave PERS and not contribute. So, like I said, I can only tell you what I know and from my perspective, and I appreciate your time. And there's ever any conversations that we can have collectively, not just first responders, but amongst teachers and others, those that kind of contribute to PERS, and please, I'd love to be a part of it, because the more we have, the better we can serve Jackson County. The more we can keep our employees up and less vacancies. So thank you all.
I'd like to comment on that. Thank you, Sheriff. Can you hear? I'll just say two things. I am glad that we're having this, this is great that we're having this discussion and forum. When I first got into the legislature, we couldn't have these discussions. And I think that, to the sheriff's point and everybody, people are understanding the situation that we're in, and we're all in this together. So thank you for doing that. Second thing, and it didn't get mentioned a lot, it's going to take something from everybody. One of the things that we did in this legislation, whether you agreed we should have had it or not, the legislature had its own retirement, SLRP. We got rid of that. Nobody in the legislature now going forward is going to have SLRP. Okay? So we ended that. We no longer have it. If you run for election in the legislature, you won't get it. It didn't bend the needle, but it was proof that we're going to take that. And to the sheriff's point, I just wanted to say, there's little things that we can do, but legislators had a separate retirement system. Sheriff, the Mississippi troopers have a separate retirement system. The teachers, if we all went into one system, you'd have more people in there and you'd have more money, but everybody wants their own situation. And I love and thank you for law enforcement. But when you approach the troopers and say, let's all get together and do this, they say no. It's a fact. But if you took all the troopers and you put them in there, you would have more money, you would have less administration, but people haven't wanted to do that. So those are things. But the legislature, we got rid of the SLRP as of this year. So.
Yes, here, Josh.
Josh Edwards, the Chancery.
Chancery Clerk, yes. So I appreciate you guys taking up a really hard topic. PERS has always been, there's nothing more sensitive than talking about people's retirement, especially if y'all covered the health system and what we've been through for Jackson County. And I can't tell you if the hybrid plan's better or 1% COLA is better, but the most important thing is don't overpromise, because whatever you are going to put in place, you got to fund. And that's what's got us into this spot. If this would have happened 15 years ago, if they were willing to take the heat and do something then, it wouldn't have been near this drastic. So everybody's going to feel the pain. The counties are going to feel the pain. The state's going to feel the pain. And we just have been, living up here and funding down here. So it's no different than any other budget. But as far as recruitment goes, I can specifically talk from some instances at the county. One reason you can't get teachers is pay. Go to the grocery store and see what it costs. And when you're taking a mandated 9% out of their check, and then the school and everybody's basically putting in another 20%, that's basically 30%. So if somebody's making $100, they only see a 70 in their paycheck, right? So it's a big deal. So you got to get teachers' pay up. Something y'all hear more about over the next year or so. Mr. Montgomery's on the new mental health board for the community. We looked at putting it in PERS. You get the option to opt in when you create a government. You couldn't afford it. And if you talk to the employees, unless some of them been there 20 plus years, they didn't want in PERS. They got to pay their bills. So go in time sometimes to a defined contribution plan where they can take that money and it's not quite as you know, that 9%. Because you ever get it to them through benefits or you give it to them in their bottom line. So I can't tell you, like I said, once again, which one of these is a better plan. But if you want better recruitment, you know, we've seen it. Nurses, you know, there's just a workforce shortage. And, you know, we were in a bind for nurses. We bumped their pay up 20%. Man, we had people lying down the street saying, hey, we'll come be your nurse. So it's that take home. People don't always think, like I said, generationally, like, hey, go get in this retirement plan. It's there for you ever. Most everybody's 2-income families now. I mean, and they have bills to pay. So that just wanted to put that out there.
Well, I agree that pay is very important too, but at the same time, we realize that all of this retirement, we don't want the situation where we have all these people, I'm worried about my own child, where they're not thinking in terms of down the road. I mean, I've happily thought about just saying, okay, everything that you inherit from me, you'll get when you're 60. Because it's like, they're not gonna have anything if we don't teach them to have some things.
All right, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Robinson. My first name is Rooks. If you ever heard anything about Rooks Robinson, it's probably me, okay? Because I grew up with the first name that nobody else had. So I was accountable all the way from the beginning, along the way. I'm a retired school teacher, administrator, superintendent, and then I started a private consulting company. I'm giving you my background to tell you that when I'm going to tell you something, it's based not only on formal education, but on experience at the same time. 48 years in public education, one way or the other. Been through it all. I say all. I was superintendent of Jackson County when Hurricane Katrina hit. We had 1,700 children homeless. We had 2 schools totally destroyed. Water didn't just get in them, water went over the tops of the buildings. It destroyed a sewage plant by one of the schools, and excuse my expression, but the school literally had crap all over it, okay? I know what adversity is. There's a number of issues that need to be dealt with, and they need to be dealt with fast. Sheriff Ledbetter, which by the way, his wife was one of my children. Mr. Eldridge that just spoke, he was one of my kids in school. I could just keep on and on and on. But for those of you that have never seen it, let me tell you this. Teachers, listen to what I'm saying, it's important. If you're in the legislature, you need to understand this. Teachers are heroes. They live it every single day. I'm telling you, teachers give salaries away. You wouldn't believe what they do for kids. And they're almost totally unrecognized. Teachers are heroes. We were notified by the state of Mississippi 1 month before Hurricane Katrina hit that we had been recognized as the largest, highest achieving school district in the state of Mississippi. And then we were almost physically destroyed. But our teachers never quit. They continued. They fought for kids. In the worst form of adversity, they performed. And the reason we were successful is everybody worked together. And I think we have potential, but I think the legislature needs to understand how serious this is. And I don't think they do. You might have a couple of people putting things into it, but as a whole, it has not taken place. I think we live in the best state in the country. But I think we have lots of growth left to us. And the source of the growth is education, and it needs to be recognized. Let me tell you what the professors in the colleges and universities tell me now. They say, we don't even have enough people graduating in education to fill the vacancies that the schools have. It's a drain that is happening. People in the legislature and the general population needs to understand where we are financially in schools. Teachers are my heroes. I see it all the time. They give and they give and they give. We've got to do something for college entrance. We've got to do something to get more people inside the universities so they can start filling the vacancies that we have in the public schools. That's part of the future. What is being discussed right now is the present. And we've got to make big steps this year. And it's going to take public pressure for this to happen. And I believe you're the source because you gave of yourself tonight just to show up. Everybody in here is here for a reason. You worry about your future, future of your children. You worry about what is going to happen to our state. And the people making the decision need to be held fully accountable. And these legislators that are here now, they're speaking out. But they got to get louder and louder and louder. And we need to hear about it in the news. The media needs to pick up on how serious this is. And it can't wait. We heard about what happens when you put losses behind you and don't deal with them. They grow and they grow and they grow. Something has to be done and we have to have a total commitment. I respectfully suggest to Ms. Granger and the people who are directly involved that we develop some form of committees and hard facts need to be addressed. And then we need to come up with the plans to address these facts. When it was mentioned just a minute ago about raises, those teachers need to be given money for what they're doing. They need significant raises. You know, they consider a significant raise in the legislature to be $400 or $500. That's bull stuff. What do you get out of $400 or $500 when it's divided over 12 paychecks, taxes, etc., etc., etc.? We've got to make it worth their while to stay in the profession. And the way the system was set up might not have been paying for itself, but it was keeping people in the system because they envisioned having some form of security when they had reached their goal a number of years. It gave them something. They need to have it now. Our teachers need to be recognized and they need to be served like they're supposed to be served because they're serving everybody else. We had the worst form of adversity that you could imagine with Katrina. But guess what? The next year we were recognized as having all level 5 schools in our school district. The 2 schools that have been wiped out. And some of those teachers are on the verge of retirement right now. They've done what they're supposed to have been done. They have worked their rear ends off. And now they need to be treated like what they are. They're heroes. They never stopped working.
I'll introduce myself. Good evening, y'all. My name is Louise Smith, and I am the 2023-24 Mississippi Teacher of the Year, and I am currently, thank you, and I am currently your Mississippi Association of Educators State Vice President. Thank you so much for coming this evening and speaking to us. One of the things that I've been saying to across the country for the last 3 years has been teacher working conditions or student learning conditions. Teacher working conditions or student learning conditions. And right now, our working conditions are part of this. This is part of our working conditions. And teachers are having to think about what they're going to have to do that when it's time for them to retire, how can they get there so that they're not working their entire lives in a classroom? So they're dealing with that stress. They're also dealing with the stress of that we are number 51 in the country when it is in terms of teacher pay. So I go back to what Dr. Baggett said. We can't recruit great teachers when we don't have great working conditions. And so I would challenge right now the legislators to think about that. And then I was listening to Mr. Wiggins talk about, or Senator Wiggins talk about how, you know, the troopers don't want to join with the teachers don't want to, and then other people, like we have all these little pots. But that's what we're trying to do as we talk about school choice and vouchers. We're wanting to take that and allow money to start going to different places, which is just going to increase the problems within our schools. Because I personally teach in the Pascagoula-Gaucher School District. I teach in Gaucher. Right next to us is the #1 high school in the state. You don't think that those Gaucher kids are going to want to come over here? And then we're going to overpopulate Ocean Springs, and the money that they bring is not enough money to create more classrooms. So we're going to overpopulate and then depopulate another school that's actually doing great things as well. So as we talk about a teacher pay raise, please do not make me a political pawn and attach it to school choice and vouchers. Please stop making me a political pawn in y'all's game.
For the record, the Senate is not, that is not the Senate plan. That is what the House has proposed, and the Senate is not in favor.
So I listened to Mr. Robinson say, you know, the legislators have to get loud. No, the legislators don't have to get loud. We have to get loud. And we have to take a vested interest in what is happening. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because you're here this evening. Where are all your other teacher friends? So you get loud. You stay on the phone with your legislators and tell them what you wish to see. And I promise I'll be right there behind you, cheering you on and being just as loud as you. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Y'all, she has brought us through our third subject,
I think y'all now understand where we are on this. Y'all got it? Okay, our third subject tonight is what is going on with this school choice. And I know that I talked to Jeff Geis, not Senator, Representative Jeff Geis, I'm sorry, yesterday, and he could not be here tonight, and I asked him the question, and this is not what I'm reading in the media, which he thought was a bad idea for me to read in the media. It's like, where else are we gonna find out anything? And he said to me, because what I asked him was, are we going to take public education money in the form of vouchers and pay for children's education that have always been educated in private schools and have always paid tuition? And he said to me, no, I have no intention of doing that. I said, I believe that is the House plan, but you two can tell me that, okay?
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
Okay. The second thing is, what about boundary lines and house values and all of those kinds of things when you start talking about overpopulating? I know that we here in Jackson County, Pascagoula, I don't think is quite at the 55 mil cap.
They are.
But they're pretty close if they're not. Moss Point is at it. Ocean Springs was at 63.53 mils in 2002 when I was here. And you're at the 55 mil cap now, or real close to it. Jackson County's sitting real close to it, okay? Whereas our neighbors to the left are, and some of them are at 43, 44 mils because they have casinos, okay? What are y'all gonna do about the people who are not paying as much in taxes coming over here and putting our boards in a situation to where if they allow one student in under this capacity situation, all you have done is made the lawyers rich on discrimination, because somebody's gonna sue because they didn't get in, whereas all of us who have been paying all these taxes all these years to live here and just passed a bond issue and all of those kinds of things, when we don't have enough room in our schools for all of this. You may have room in one area but not another. So I'm gonna let some of them talk about what they're seeing, but we need as much explanation as possible. The thing that Mr. Geis kept telling me yesterday, he said, but nothing's finalized, nothing's finalized. The problem is y'all finalize things and we don't know about it until after it's over with, just like this. And so why don't we look at things in a situation where y'all have time to discuss with your constituents when you're getting ready to finalize things? But I just want to mention some of that, and I know some of the other people here have some questions on this.
So I will unpack there's a lot to unpack there, and I will get to the ones I can remember. So, and let me just say, I've been on the Senate Education Committee since y'all, I appreciate, elected me to the Senate. I've been there when we did consolidation, when we did what you're seeing as the Mississippi Miracle now. I was there. I've authored the Early Learning Collaborative Act that is now placed as top 5 in the country in education. So we're very, I guess, attuned to education. So taking one, school choice. The issue you're talking about, that has been coming out of the House. As I remind people, there's 2 chambers, okay? That's how our founders set it up. So a lot of what you're hearing is what the Speaker of the House has been promoting out there, okay? And the fact of the matter is there is not a bill. And you don't know what the bill is until you actually see it. So I can tell you that what I call universal pure voucher school choice, right now, the votes aren't there in the Senate, and what I can tell, the votes aren't there in the House. So I don't know how that's going to get out of the House. That, in my opinion, is why you're hearing coming out of the House that they're connecting the pay raise to the school choice, because that gets them the votes that they need to pass the school choice, because if you do it on a standalone bill, they're not there. Okay, so the Senate is prepared to have our education plan, and it's not what the House is. So you're going to see this session a back and forth, excuse me, and a debate between the House and the Senate. One of those goes on to one of the things that you talked about, is the school choice. I use that as an umbrella term. Okay, first of all, 45 states across the country have some version of school choice. It's just, what do you call it? What does it look like? Now, there are those that are pushing what you're hearing who want a pure voucher like that, okay? But that's not what in an umbrella term of school choice is. Down here on the coast, we have a version of that. If you live in Pascagoula and you want to go to Ocean Springs, you can pay tuition and come to Ocean Springs.
If you're IB or AP.
This is what I'm saying. The school district, receiving school district, gets to define it. The Senate plan will allow that to stay in place. Okay? The Senate plan allows that, a version of that to occur. Or actually, it can be done anyway. It's done now. If you live in Gulfport, you can come to Pascagoula and pay a tuition however Pascagoula wants to do it. Okay? That's not changing. That is a version of school choice. Okay? What you're not hearing in the House, but what we think you're going to hear coming from the Senate, is what's called specialty schools. Now, right here in Jackson County, and I think Ocean Springs may not be the only one, but we have the exceptional school, which is your very severely special needs. Every school, high school and district in Jackson County sends those special needs kids to the Jackson County Exceptional School that is run by the Pascagoula Gaucher School District. The funding's worked out. These school districts, Moss Point, Ocean Springs, Jackson County, they all work this out on their own. That is a version of the specialty schools that you're going to hear. Okay, that is a version of school choice. Okay, and what I would argue, that can already be done. However, sometimes you need legislation to spur people on. And so if a district or districts or a county wants an arts school, you can do that. You can send them to there. That's school choice. If they want a music school, you can send them to there. Okay, you can do that. That's what the Senate is coming up with. All right. What I think everybody is talking about or hearing is the pure voucher system. As we sit here today, the votes aren't there. They're not going to, and the Senate's not going to pass that. We didn't pass a version of that last year when the House sent it over. So I would encourage you, and to your point about what you hear on the media, is I say this wherever I go, 50% of my time is spent debunking misinformation that comes out of the session. I encourage you to call me up, to call Jeremy up, to call us, email us. The session's really busy, and we can tell you what we're actually hearing. I can tell you from the Senate side, I get people and they say, oh, be against that bill. I said, that's a House bill. It hasn't even come to the Senate yet. But I need to hear it. But we have to follow the process and look at that. Okay, and then I think I know what you're talking about, the school lines. I think, is that where like more people are going to come into a district and you're already paying a certain amount of money? Is that it? Is that what you're talking? Huh?
Local tax.
Okay, so, okay. I have been, let me say that about what was called the old school funding formula. There was the local and then the state portion, okay? Bryce Wiggins from day one has been on my soapbox saying, I think, and I'm going to use George County as an example, they never paid at the highest millage rate. And yet they wanted more money. But Ocean Springs and Pascagoula and all, they were at the highest level. And my point was, why should we, if you're not going to support the schools locally, why should we do that from the state level on that? That's not fair. It's not fair to the students in Ocean Springs whose residents are paying 50 or 60 millage, and George County's paying 30. And if you want to get up into the Delta and places like that, their local assessment is like 20 mils or something like that.
28.
Okay, 20, thank you. 28. Okay, that's not fair. We changed the funding formula last year, which was supposed to make that better, and I will admit, I don't know all the specifics and the details, but I think where you're going with it is, the money follows the child, and every single discussion that we have about some version, whatever it is, always involves money. And it always involves money. And you cannot escape education without talking about money. And the point that you're making is what we discuss in the Senate when we talk about those things. So just feel certain that's not going to go away on that. And then just to finish up on those things, I think if you want to talk the politics of this school choice debate right now, it's, from what I understand, is being driven by certain ones north of, let's call it north of Hattiesburg, probably north of Jackson, okay? I've said this to the people in the Senate, we've all along the Gulf Coast in South Mississippi, A and B school districts. We're doing, these administrators, the taxpayers, the teachers doing, we are the standard that you want in this state. Don't mess with us. And if you're going to pass something, I do care about that child who's in the Yazoo City School District, who, through no fault of his own, has continued to be an F school district for all of his life, and his parents and whatever. I want to do something about it. And I don't have all the answers, and I'm hoping that I'm willing to look at what the bill that's coming forward. And I will tell you, in this debate, you're going to see a House plan and you're going to see a Senate plan. Understand how those things work. If the House sends their plan, the Senate will send their plan, then we'll go to each other, and then towards the end of the session, we have a conference. But you need to be following that. And so my point is that we want to see what the plan is that's going to come out before I say I'm going to vote for it or against it. I will tell you, if what I'm hearing about the vouchers and all that, I'm against that. I would be surprised, though, if what I call a pure voucher universal bill comes out of the House. That's why that's why they're talking about attaching it to the teacher pay raise. The teacher pay raise, of course, is popular. And I'll finish with this. We are going to give a teacher pay raise. I don't know that we're not. It always tends to be, what is the amount? And Jeremy and I were talking, just so you know the numbers, generally speaking, $1,000 pay raise to every teacher across the state is equivalent to $50 million. So if you multiply, you do the math on that. So that's $50 million. And I hear it. We were talking about PERS. We're talking about $500 million to go into PERS. If you do a teacher pay raise, you get there, you're going to be talking about another $100 million. So that's $600 million right off the top. These are the budget numbers we have. If we do a $3,000 pay raise, that's $150 million, and so forth and so on. So those are the numbers that we have to deal with when we're looking at it. But you can bet we would all support a teacher pay raise.
One thing I will say is, when you're doing your numbers, make sure that we get the funding of PERS to go with it, because those high 4 or high 8's gonna go up too. So you gotta remember that when you calculate.
I like to stay in on message, that's good.
I'm going to try to be quick. Maybe as quick as Bryce, but I might go a little longer. I'm just kidding. I like to mess with Bryce. Bryce is great at doing what he does. I want to say a few things. Number one, we got onto another topic, and I hate it that our buddy Hank had to leave. Hank's obviously in the House, Hank Zuber. He does a fantastic job representing us. We've heard a lot about the talk in the House and the Senate and this plan versus that plan. And Hank's not here to talk about the House plan. So I want to make sure that y'all take that into consideration. It's really not a fair debate on that. But I think I can say exactly what Hank would say, is that we don't have the plan yet. We don't have it. And so Hey, I also want to say this. You guys don't care if the House is fighting with the Senate or the Senate's fighting with the House. That doesn't matter. The legislature's the legislature. I get it. We've got a job to do, and we're going to go up there and do it, okay? But that is part of the sausage making, as we call it, of getting a bill together and coming up with it. It's a great system that our founding fathers put together. Any of you guys have taught government or history or things like that. By the way, Bryce has entered a bill to try to get us back teaching civics and government, things like that. They're very important. So I'll give him that. But it's a complicated process. And so I want to go back to one thing, because I do, I just want to make sure to get this clear, because he's not here tonight. My friend, Senator Daniel Sparks, he went to law school with me. Great guy. I really appreciate it. He's done more work on PERS than anybody. And I just want to explain what I think I understand what his comment is, like we're doing here today, right? We're talking about a House plan on education and a Senate plan on education. And the Senate plan on education, Bryce has already talked about very well. You know, public to public, we'll look at. As long as the school that's accepting gets to set the parameters and set all of that. That's important, right? The specialty schools. I'm a big fan of the specialty schools, not just because of music and art and things like that that are important, but for things like dyslexia and autism. I understand from looking at that if we can start teaching and getting students that have dyslexia early on and help them remediate that, the chances of them going right back into our public schools and graduating valedictorian are great. Otherwise, if we miss them and they miss that 3rd or 4th grade mark that we're watching, and they get put in the back of the class, or they get put in, they're not feeling into it. And these are typically smart individuals. You know where they end up. There's studies that show that 50% of our prison populations are people with dyslexia. And so imagine our number 4 budget area for our state, which is corrections. Imagine half of that money going into education or going into PERS, because we do something better now that 10 and 20 years down the road is going to show those benefits. That's not sexy. That's not going to get me elected in 2 years, because those results aren't there yet. But that's the kind of results I'm interested in, because that's generational changing results. Same thing with specialty schools. If we can get students that are interested in automotive, back in automotive and welding and things like that, we've got our junior colleges working with that. We've got we opened a brand new CTE in Jackson County and in St. Martin this year. We're doing things like that. We're kind of turning that focus towards that. That's going to be generational changes. Our career coaches that we put in the classrooms. I don't see any here, and I try to keep up with them because I'm a big fan of theirs. They go into the classrooms, they find the students, not just the valedictorians that are wanting to know something about how to be a knee surgeon, so they take them to be in ortho maybe. But they're talking to the students that hate school, that are sitting in the back of the classroom and they don't want to be there because they've got their brothers and sisters that they're helping, their single mother, go out and work and put food on the table. They've got to cook and they've got to clean. You know what? School's just a bore to them. They don't want to do it. Those career coaches go into those classrooms, they find those students and they say, hey, let's go take this skills test and just come with me. And they make friends with them. They learn from them. They teach them soft skills like interviewing skills. They'll buy things like soap and deodorant for these children if they don't have it. It's things like that that are big, and those are generational changes, and we've done that. That's huge. And that just gets looked over sometimes. But look, by the way, we started that here in Jackson County. After we brought them to the legislature and showed the rest of the state how good of a program that is, we got funding for the rest of the state to do it. So we've got career coaches in every high school now. That's a win, and that started right here in Jackson County, so we're doing good things too. But let me just get back and say what I was going to say, because I don't have notes, obviously. I'm just kind of talking as I go here. But what I was going to say is we've got a Senate plan that's being developed, and we've got a House plan that's being developed. Those are going to get thrown in the pot. We're going to be cooking, and we're going to be talking about these things. And then come about mid-March, we better have a bill together that we can get to a conference, or it's going for another year. We've got to get to that point. If there's a better idea out there, and we don't hear about it until mid-March, what's said may be, oh my gosh, we can't bring it to the legislature now, they're not going to understand it. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean I'm dealing with stupids up there and they don't get it. It's because at that point in the process, we've been cooking this around so much that sometimes it's best for us to step back and punt and come back next year and find out what else has been said. And then bring it to the rest of the 177 legislators to talk about it. And we will do that this year, Bonnie. But that wasn't... listen, Daniel Sparks is a super nice guy, super smart guy, and I don't want anybody leaving here thinking, hey, look, you don't have to like him. I'm not trying to make you like him, but I don't want anybody to leave here thinking that he was just dismissive, because he certainly is not. He offered to come down here tonight, and I said, Daniel, your wife's having a baby in like 3 weeks. You're not driving to the coast, from Tishomingo County to come talk about PERS, but he offered to do it. That's the kind of guy he is, okay? So I just wanted to make that said too, because we do serve in Jackson with very good people. Republicans and Democrats, okay? And I know some people probably don't like me saying that, but there are. We don't have what they have in Jackson. We're not fighting back and forth. We're not butting heads. We're going to dinner with our Democrat colleagues, and we're talking with them. And that's a good thing. I don't want to go leave my wife and my kids at home, my 2 kids who are in public school. I'm a product of public school. My wife's a product of public school, so it's very important to us. But I don't want to leave them and go up there and just fight and do that like they're doing in Washington. I hate for our friend Mike Easy have to go do that. He's having to do that up there in Washington. But let that stay there. We're not going to get into that. You have a lot of good people in Jackson that are working for you, and I know because I'm an attorney, and nobody likes an attorney. I'm also a politician, and people don't like politicians, so I get a double whammy against me. But it's an honor to serve. It is an absolute honor to represent the people in this room in Jackson. And if I ever get where I don't come here and talk to you like this, bring me home. And please, I gave Mr. Massey a minute ago, I don't know if he had to leave, but I gave him my personal number. I will give anybody my personal number and ask you to reach out to me and call me. Understanding that look, we're a part-time legislature. I'm an attorney. I've got to put food on the table. This job doesn't pay much, even though I get told I'm bought and paid for all the time. If I had $1 for every time I've been told I was bought and paid for by anybody, I'd be able to pay for my house right now. But look, it's important for you to be able to get in touch with me. My personal cell number, my email, I'm on Facebook. Even if I don't get in touch with you, if I don't get right back to you, just understand it's not because I'm not going to. We want to hear from you. Bonnie reached out to me after this last session. I said, Bonnie, as a matter of fact, I think my daughter came with me because Melissa had to leave out somewhere that day. And I said, well, my daughter's going to have to come, but Bonnie said, come on. So I'm going to have to be a parent too, but I will come meet with you. I know Bryce does the same. We take meetings like that. This is such an honor and a privilege to do this. And to represent not only teachers and first responders, our sheriffs and our firemen, but our barbers and our road workers and people who work at Eagles and Chevron and everybody, and they're all important to us. And I just want to leave you with one thing. So we've talked about 3 topics tonight that are very, very, very important, especially to everybody in this room. But when I got out of law school, I had an older attorney told me, he said, Jeremy, you're about to start out in your world as an attorney. And you're going to end up with a bunch of files one day. You're going to look at your filing cabinet's going to be full. He said, and some of those files are going to just make you want to pull your hair out, and some of them are going to seem like you can put them to the back and just ignore them. He said, but don't forget that every file in that filing cabinet is the most important thing to somebody in their life. And I take that with me to Jackson with every bill that gets filed. And there's 4,000 something that get filed every year. And that helps me remember that whatever it is, it's important. These are 3 very important topics, and I appreciate y'all having us here tonight and presenting an alternative, which was presented, and you do a great job at laying out for us, Bonnie, and we'll have that in our arsenal when we go back. We do our homework. We're not going to be experts in everything. I'm not an actuary. I don't. If I did math, I probably would have been a doctor and not an attorney. They just get paid better and seem happier about it. But I didn't have those math skills. But we do try to do our homework on every single thing that we can. So let us know what's important. Right, I know we talk about stuff all the time, right? That's important. We visited on some things and run numbers. And those of you that are resources to us, it's very important to us down here. Whether you're retired and you're just talking to us about how important PERS is to you and what it means to you, or if you're looking at these numbers and saying, hey, this isn't going to work. We got to do something. That's when to tell us. The time, not that if we start ignoring you, let us come home. We're not going to kick the can down the road. I know there's been so much anger on these issues, and that's, look, we live in a world that festers that, right? I mean, you get on, and it's so easy to get on and just want to pound the table at stuff, and I see it. But if we start getting angry, just start yelling at each other and trying to win arguments, we're not going to get anything done. So thank you for allowing us this opportunity. Mr. Robinson, thank you for what you said earlier. That was very important. for everybody to hear. Shoot, I love my kids' teachers. David Baggett, our superintendent, and Mike does a great job. Keep doing a great job, keep holding us accountable, and let us know if there are any other issues that we can help with. We'll be happy to do it.
Well, I want to say thank you for the three of you coming. I know Hank had to leave early. And I really appreciate y'all being willing to come and have these conversations. Yes.
I don't know that I want to ask anything, to be honest with you, and I don't want to belabor the school choice piece. It's almost, for me, it's almost a separate meeting. I've met with our legislators, 2 or 3 times in the past month, and they've been gracious. But I'll say a couple of things from a school standpoint, in public education and choice. And we've met, and I feel confident that our legislators here on the coast are going to support our public education. So when I say what I'm fixing to say, by no means am I attacking these gentlemen, because I think we're all on the same page at the end of the day. But we talk about our teachers, we talk about an educational system, and in my opinion, and been doing it a long time. By the way, I'm Mike Lindsay, superintendent of the OSHS Springs School District. I think school choice is an attack on public education. I really do. It's an attack on our teachers, because a lot of times to sell school choice and why we need to go to school choice, guess what some of our legislators have to do that are in North Mississippi? They have to tell you their public schools aren't working. Because if they were working, we wouldn't need school choice. So that bothers me for our teachers, because our teachers do great work, and I ask why school choice, and I'm going to be off on some of these numbers, but I'll give you some context. When I started in this profession, we were 50th in the United States in education. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we are like number 14 in the nation on our national assessments from our students. Our low socioeconomic students are number 1 in the nation in growth. Our African American students are number 1 in the nation in growth. And that's coming from our public schools. People all around the nation are talking about the Mississippi Miracle and what our public schools are doing, and how are they doing that? How are they getting the literacy rates up so high? And we want to change public education. So my question is why, and my concern from some of our other legislators in North Mississippi, is it's not a fix. I can tell you it's not a fix. It's a political agenda that's being pushed. And that's the only reason we're having a conversation about school choice. And I'm fine. I get the political side of it. I see both sides of it. And there's arguments for both sides. We've been arguing about this for almost a year. And we're arguing about something that the bill's not even written. We don't even know what's in the bill. We keep arguing that school choice works. We don't even know what the bill is, so it's hard to argue that it can't work. But basically, speaking from public to private, you're talking about taking public dollars and giving them to private schools and giving parents choice. And I'm all about choice. This country was built on choice. But we also have boundaries and we have regulations in all of our public aspects. I don't get to choose whether I go to the sheriff's office or OSHS Springs Police Department. I don't get to choose that I want to vote for Jansen Owens in Pearl River County, because I can't, because we have regulations, we have boundaries. Our public school system was set up on that same boundary system, same regulation system. So you talk about public to private, you're talking about taking public money, giving it to private schools with no accreditation and no regulation. We have about 156 pages of accreditation standards. It deals with, we have to do audits on our finances, on our special needs students, on our child nutrition, on our bus. We probably have 5 to 8 audits that we have to take care of. Our students have to take state assessments. Our legislators passed the 3rd grade gate. And that's one of the things we talk about, is that they got our literacy rate so high that our kids are doing so well. Why in the world would you pass that legislatively and say it's great for every kid, that's why we got there, and then allow the kids to use public money to leave so they don't have to test, so they don't have to be held accountable? That just makes no sense to me. If we think the system's working, all the vocational courses, all the CTE, all the special schools, those are awesome. But do we really want to give public money to students and parents and families to take them out of that system to go to a private school and have none of that accountability and none of that accreditation? They're going to do what they want to. They don't have to do all this. And I support my private schools. They're educating kids. I support them. I really do. A lot of my family members are in private school, cousins and those types of things. So I support them, but there's no accountability. And I think they should be supported, and I want them to do a great job. They shouldn't use our public tax money to do that because they're not being held accountable. And that's scary. We're talking about this system, and Bonnie, I may be wrong with this because I'm not a bookkeeper, and you forgot more about the system than what I know. But we're talking about all the money it's going to take to get this right. That's our tax money that's going to make this right. Now what we're talking about with school choice is taking our public money, putting it into a private system where somebody's going to make money.
That are not PERS members.
And all of that money that could be going to shore this up is going to teachers and employees. Guess what they're not doing? They're not paying into this. So all of that public money is being used to pay for an education that does not support this system. So every dollar that goes from public to private, we miss out on this. So if $200 million goes to school choice from public to private, that's $200 million they're going to have to take away somewhere else to put into this. So it just doesn't make sense to me. Support private schools. A lot of them do a great job. Our public schools are doing a great job as well, especially on the coast. The question is, what about the failing schools? I think there's 3 or 4 districts that are F school or F rated. I always get the question, what about the students in those school districts? Fix the district. Fix the district. Don't change every other district that's doing amazing things. Because you can't have, it's hard for these gentlemen to make one standard that fits every school in Mississippi because the dynamics and socioeconomics are so different. Go to the schools that aren't doing well and don't let the students who can leave, and that sounds bad, but don't let them, but what you're going to end up with are the haves and have-nots. The students that can leave are going to leave. The students that don't have the means to leave, what are we going to do with them? We still have a broken system. We still have a broken district. So I just ask that we find the system to fix the district. Let's pour some extra money in fixing the district so that we serve every kid. So I think public to private is a total attack on public education, in my opinion. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be telling you my opinion, but I am. The public to public is another, and I say public to private because I'm not making that up. That's what the Speaker of the House has gone publicly and said that's eventually where he wants to be as a leader of our House. I'm not trying to scare you with that. I'm repeating what the Speaker of the House said. It's kind of a 3 to 5 year plan. Public to public is still a lot of issues, to be honest with you. I love the idea, we've already talked about this, the receiving school being able to set those parameters. But a real quick math problem, and our teacher of the year, state teacher of the year mentioned that. What you're going to hear is public funds will follow the students. And you've heard that. You've heard that in the argument. You've heard that in the brochures. That is not totally 100% accurate. The state funds follow the students, which is about $6,000, $6,000 to $7,000 is weighted. It's different but easy for the math, I'm going to say $6,000 to use my analogy. So the state's going to give us $6,000 for every kid. They do that for our students now. It costs about a little over $12,000 to educate a student in Ocean Springs. So if a student from Jackson County, we'd love to educate them, but if they come to Ocean Springs, they're going to bring with them $6,000 and not pay our local 66 mil of tax. So we get $6,000 to educate the student that doesn't live in our community. Guess who's going to subsidize the other $6,000? Our local taxpayers. So the more people that you take, that $12,000, which is our average, basically our revenue divided by the number of students, mathematically has to come down if you start taking students that aren't paying local taxes. Because our system is built around supporting the public school with our boundaries and the people who live in our district. I love choice. I wish I had choice where my tax dollars went. I really don't. But there's, I would say, probably 60% of you, 50% of you sitting in here right now, if you live in Ocean Springs, do not have kids in our district. You may have had them, you may have gone yourself, but you're paying school taxes to support our school system, and we appreciate that. That's what makes us so good, is the support. That's what makes Jackson County so good, Pascagoula so good. And that's what our system was built on. If you start pulling money out of the system becomes flawed. And that's what I'm concerned about from a financial standpoint. I want to educate all students. There's about 30 other points that I have. I'm not going to belabor the school choice thing. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer those. And again, I want to tell these gentlemen, say to these gentlemen, they've been supportive. We've met with them. We're on the same page with a lot of things. I'm not concerned about our local legislators, but there is a huge push politically to push school choice. And my thought is, let's just fix the schools that aren't doing well and leave the ones that are doing well alone.
I appreciate his comments. We need to, one of the things that I would ask y'all and Hank and Jeff Guys and everybody else that represents South Mississippi, and really all of Mississippi, but please, either do what you suggested a while ago, get a game plan and come back and wait till the next year or call a special session, but have time to go home and talk to these superintendents and talk to your people to think about what does this do before you just do it and make a decision. It's got to be done right this moment, is my best ask of y'all at this point. And you know, the thing is people like Ocean Springs, when he said the taxpayers would end up paying for those other students, really, in the school setting, as long as y'all keeping that 55 mil cap where it is, what we're really having to do is share the resources that are currently in the school with all of the others, because you can't go up on the taxes. But you do have to give up all of your spots and all of your resources, and your classrooms are going to get huge and all of those kinds of things. So,
Yeah, thank you, buddy. And I just wanted to follow up, Mike, on one thing, because I just want y'all to be on the lookout for it, because that's another thing that I like to do, is kind of give you a heads up on what you're going to see. We do have we're re-rating the schools, right, Mike? We're about to bump that. So Mike mentioned we've got 2 or 3 F schools or F districts. We're going to have more F districts. We're going to have fewer A districts, because one good thing about our system is it doesn't allow for complacency where we're all A schools all of a sudden. That's going to be rescored, just like a grading system should be, right? And so we're going to end up with more. That doesn't mean that we're getting worse. It means that we've gotten to that point where we've got to bring that standard up. And we should do that. If we stop moving our standards up, next thing you know, everybody's A schools, and it doesn't mean anything. So be ready for that. Also know that we're going to the statewide elections in 2027. There's going to be a lot said about public schools and about things happening. I know we've had at least one statewide officer talking about administrative costs in schools and how high that is. Just know that we've done our homework, and we've met with guys like Mike and David and everybody down here, Casey with the school. But we understand that when it comes to administrative costs, that's not just Mike's paycheck, right? That's insurance costs that we have a ton of down here. That's school bus drivers. That's HVAC. That's things like that. So it kind of concerns me when a political football gets used. That's the administrative costs. And look, we should certainly look at it. But that's going to be something that I want y'all to know, that we know, because a lot of you guys are teachers, or you've been in administration, or you serve in that capacity, and you understand that when you see high administrative costs, that's not because Mike Lindsay's going to buy a new car every year. That's because Mike's making sure that his air conditioner is turned on in his schools, and that we're going to school closer to year-round now. So there's hotter days that we're in schools, and we're trying to get lunches out and get bus drivers on the road and stuff like that. So when we hear that, when you hear that coming from a statewide officer in just political talk, understand that we get it. We're not ignoring it, but the reason we're not making a big stink about it is because there's no stink there. Okay, all the time. And I just wanted to say that, just so you would be on the lookout and that you would understand that issue. Bryce, did you want to close with anything? Okay. Are you sure? All right, good. Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody. I know there's not much Christmas spirit in here, but I hope we all leave and we get back into it.
That's right. I think that's why we didn't have as much turnout. I heard many Christmas parties were going on tonight, Bonnie, and we were just trying to get this at the last minute, and we really appreciate everybody coming out. I hope everybody signed in, so we'll have names and addresses so we can contact y'all if there's another meeting or things of that nature or more information that needs to come. But we really appreciate y'all coming. I hope this was helpful to everyone. Is anybody else need the mic for a moment? Are y'all good? Well, we will go from here.
Does anybody want my phone number? I'm happy to share it. Just find me afterwards. I don't have any cards. I need to get better about bringing them, but I'm happy to share my. You want me to call it out yet? If you want to write it down, here it is. I'm going to do it one time. Jeremy England, 228-219-1180. If I don't answer the first calls, because we can do that, we don't recognize numbers, but if you text me or you leave me a message, I will certainly call you back, and Melissa will make me do it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Okay, y'all can just email Mr. Wiggins, but thank y'all for coming. I appreciate it, and hopefully this was helpful to everyone tonight. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year, and please all be safe out there with this Ocean Springs traffic. Okay, talk to you later. Thank y'all.